All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots podcast. We have another special guest from around the world. And as I say week to week, only the business owner can say their name and the business like they can. So introduce yourself, please, and your business and just a little something about you.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm Kay Miller, and one good thing about that name is I never have to spell it. So that's a good thing, and a bad thing because it doesn't stand out. And I am the co-author of a new book called Uncopyable You. And I should say it's Uncopyable You. Create a brand that gets people to know, like, trust, and very importantly, remember you. So this is all about personal branding. And as we just talked briefly, really, that's a tough thing to do to really stand out in today's world. And so I've got some killer advice to help you, the personal, solo entrepreneur or business owner, to do that.
Fantastic. Well, let's introduce the show. We'll come back and we'll get started. And we're also going to find out why you're also known as the Muffler Mama. So we'll be right back. Welcome to Small Business Pivots, a podcast produced for small business owners. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, founder and CEO of Boss, where we make business ownership simplified for success. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. All right, welcome back to Small Business Pivots. Today we have Kay Miller, a #1 Amazon bestseller book, also known as Muffler Mama. But let's start with your upbringing, because I know a lot of business owners have mindset issues, right? So they feel like they're not qualified to be a business owner, this, that, or another. And so sometimes when we're listening to podcasts, there has to be something we can relate to. So for me, myself, I was kidnapped by gunpoint as a small child, kind of grew up as an introvert, and kind of faced those challenges, wasn't very studious. And, some business owners, they just think I'm too dumb to do this, or to be, successful. So what are some things that how you grew up and then how you started adulting so that you got to where you're at today?
Well, I'm happy to answer that, but I have to ask, is that true? Were you kidnapped at gunpoint?
This is live. So yes, it was when I was a toddler. Yep. Born and into a domestic abuse family, had an abusive biological father. My mother tried to protect us and took us, my little brother and I, to her dad's house, my grandpa, and he came over there and kidnapped us, or kidnapped me, the oldest, by gunpoint. And so then we were put up in foster care. Wow. So kind of a strange little story. So I grew up in that kind of atmosphere, a private, I would say kind of, we went by a last name alias. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet and stuff. So, but people would try to track people. So it was kind of an eventful life, but it also kept me very timid and lack of self-doubt, nervous of other people, those kinds of things. So yeah, absolutely. So for me, that was a huge challenge to build my self-worth, to believe that I could be what I want to be and not what somebody else was trying to make me. So yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thanks for asking.
Wow. Well, great answer too. That's horrible that it happened. And it also explains a lot.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just kidding. But I have nothing like that. But in my background,
yes, everybody has a story. Come
on.
I
do have. I have a story, but I grew up in an incredibly normal family, especially compared to that. But not an entrepreneurial family. So my dad, as it was back in the day, a lot of times he worked for one company his entire life. Ooh. He met my mom at there's a real retailer in Seattle. It's out of business now, but it was around for 100 years, called Frederick & Nelson. And they had a cafeteria actually in the basement, and he met my mom there. She was a waitress and he was a busboy. So
wow.
So anyway, that's the kind of big, exciting stories I have in my past. But I did, as a kid and teenager, I did like entrepreneurial things, and partly because I liked money. And, I don't know what my allowance was back then because I'm 65 years old now. I think it was a quarter a week.
Oh,
So
wow.
that went further than it does today, of course. But I wanted to buy things. I wanted to have things. And so I wanted to make money. And until I got into the babysitting years, which, were not that great. Anyway, I wasn't super excited about being a babysitter, but I loved to sell things. And one of the things, do you remember the little toy called creepy crawlers? Are you old enough to remember
I
that?
do remember. I do remember the name. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you poured this glue stuff
Yeah.
into a metal tray and put it in the oven. There is no way that would be legal today because talk about a burn hazard. And then
Yeah.
they had a girls version that was called Piccadilly. And so I would make those and set up little stores and at first just sell to my parents and my relatives. And I noticed the further you get out from your nuclear family, the more you can charge, right? Your parents are like,
Yeah.
what? We feed
You've
you.
already learned sales at that point.
So, and then as I got even older, probably the best business model I had. And I also wrote a book on sales, Uncopyable Sales Secrets. One of the best uh, business models that I had was to sell penny candy with a neighbor of mine. And he would go to the store. And back then, again, olden days, you could buy candy at 7-Eleven for a penny. And then we'd sell it to the kids who were too young to go to 7-Eleven. We'd sell it for 2 cents. That's a pretty darn good profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, unfortunately, we ate quite a bit of our inventory. So that was there was a lot of shrinkage, as they call it in retail. But, we made money and it was fun. And one thing I really liked about that was that we had really happy customers. I mean, there was no need to market or advertise. We had word of mouth, no pun intended. But, the kids told other kids. And so we had that going. And I ended up earning enough money to upgrade from my super dorky Raleigh bike to a 10-speed, actually a 12-speed bike. And I earned that money by selling candy. So,
Wow.
and dentists, I'm sure loved me too. So
Yeah.
it's like a
And
win-win.
all your friends.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All my friends. So I thought, boy, sales is fun. I mean, really, if you can sell the right product or service, and that's a big part of my philosophy in sales and as an entrepreneur or business owner is it's not forcing someone to buy something they don't want to buy. That never works unless, maybe if you're selling solar or you're selling, I don't know. One time I bought a huge crate of grapefruit from a door-to-door sales guy.
Wow.
And he would never came back. So, you can pressure someone into buying something once, but I'm sure you as a listener are not trying to do a one-on-one sale. You're in this for the long game. And so, the mindset around sales it really is super important. It's extremely important because if you are helping someone solve a problem or helping them achieve something that they want, what's wrong with that? In fact, I like to call selling helping because if you're doing that, hey, you're doing good by doing good, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where it came from. And then I did go to college and I graduated with a degree in business because my dad split the cost of college with me. And he said, I'm going to give you 4 years and I want you to come out with a degree that will get you a job. So that was those were my marching orders. So I got a degree in marketing, thinking that it would be really cool to be in marketing, but unfortunately, you had to have an MBA for marketing, really, or some experience. And, unless you found a company that was dumb enough to hire a recent college graduate to
Yeah.
help you with your marketing. So I ended up with a sales job. So I was actually, my first job, I was the only female outside salesperson they had ever hired. So that was a very interesting experience. And I did very well. And so I was hired away by Walker Exhaust. It still exists today, and it's a line of automotive exhaust products. So it was a very glamorous product line. So, mufflers, catalytic converters, and pipes and things that, make a car not, pollute as much and make as
Yeah.
much noise. That was my product line. And at that point, I was not the first woman ever hired, but I was one of just a few. And I went on to become the number one salesperson out of the whole company, national sales force. And so as just one of 3 or 4 women, that was a big, huge deal. And I know we want to talk about small business. So I don't want to dwell on this too long, but the story, one of the stories that I feel was just really so critical to my success was the story that gave me the nickname Muffler Mama.
Hmm.
And so, here I was, 25 years old by that time, maybe, very young and didn't know anything about cars, except for driving one. Of course, then they didn't have backup cameras. So I had quite a few accidents, but they were all going backwards. So that's no longer a problem. But I went to one of my distributors and I said, I really don't know about exhaust products. So I want to go into one of the muffler shops and I want to learn how to do this myself. So who can I talk to about that? So they gave me one of their customers that they thought would be good and open to this idea. And they were excited about the idea. Really. My experience as a woman in male dominated fields has been really interesting. I feel like men are sometimes reticent or reluctant at first because the credibility issue or whatever, but so many of them through my career have really embraced and helped me. So this customer, I went in and I said, will you teach me how to weld, how to install a muffler? And they just got a huge kick out of it. And they said, of course. And then they looked down at my shoes, which were penny loafers, I think, at the time. And they said, you need to go to Red Wing Shoe Store and get some steel toe boots.
Wow.
I'm like, what? So I did. And that whole story is in my book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets. And actually, some of it is in Uncopyable You as well, because that gave me this nickname, Muffler Mama. It earned me huge respect with customers and prospects and the people on my sales team, the other salespeople and sales management. So one day that I spent in a muffler shop, which, if you read the story, it was pretty comical, but it has, how many years later? 40 years later, is still with me, and it's part of my personal brand. And so that story is something that when you're listening, you as a listener, I really encourage you to dig in and find the stories that you have in your past or that you can create that will make you stand out, make you unique, make you uncopyable. Because the way that your story, unfolds will be different, even if someone else has that similar story. How you make it personal is a critical part of your personal brand.
Absolutely. And we talked earlier about people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And so just like you were talking, let me back up. I love the way you framed sales. Sales is fun, right? And I know for business owners, most business owners hate sales. This is going to be a great conversation and very helpful tool for them. And sharing your story is important for them to hear because it is all about your past experiences, I believe. For me and my story, that could have been the complete opposite. I could have not been adopted and grown up in that lifestyle and probably behind bars. I mean, that's where my biological dad was all the time.
Wow.
From what I hear, never met him, but our stories could have changed. And so for me, my story, I can empathize with business owners because I know what it feels like to have self-doubt. Am I doing this wrong? Why is everybody else doing this right? But So using your past experiences, your story is critical. But let's talk about the know, like, and trust part, because we were talking about that before, and you heard somebody say that that's not important recently, and you and I were like, "What?"
What
Because
the
I'm
heck?
all about know, like, and trust. I'm not going to buy from somebody A, I don't trust, and then B, I don't like because I don't want to see you again.
Right, right. And
So let's
so,
talk about your book and how that all plays out.
yeah, and just I'm going to tie that back a little bit to the Muffler story because that became part of my branding promise that I wanted to really know and understand not only my product, but my product from the customer's perspective. And, that showed my commitment, which is still part of my branding promise. I want my customers, my clients, the people that I work with to succeed. Now, who doesn't want to buy from somebody that has that attitude? Now, as far as the know, like, and trust, when I think of know, I don't think of someone that you know from a networking meeting, or someone that you heard on a podcast, or maybe even somebody that you have a relationship with. It's what do they think about you when they think, okay, I know Kay Miller. Well, what do I know about her? I know that she's an authority, that it's really important for her to be at the top of her game and for her to use all her skills to help me. So it's not just know as in being an acquaintance. As far as the like part, one thing that I always refer back to is a book that you've read, everyone listening, you've read, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Mhm.
Well, to be liked, maybe you don't have to be liked to be, sell someone something. But when your name comes up on their caller ID, do they say, "Oh my gosh, can't wait to hear from Kay"? Or do they think, "Oh my gosh, yeah, it's Kay again. Well,
Yeah.
voicemail."
Yeah.
So liking is important because what if they like your competitor and they don't really like you? Even if everything else being equal, they're going to choose someone they like. And the interesting thing about getting someone to like you is to follow the advice in that book, to be likable, which basically means to be interested in the other person and a good listener. And, we talked before the podcast, and of course, your job in this podcast is for, to make me look good and for me to share my information. But I have a podcast too, and I'm going to give it a little plug. Uncopyable Women in Business. So I exclusively interview women. And when you hear me interviewing other women, you'll see it's the opposite. I don't want to, have that be all about me and my story. I want to draw them out. So obviously, listening to be interesting, all you really have to be is interested. So it's simpler than you think. So if it's that easy, why not be likable? When I'm friends and with many of my clients and customers, we have that kind of relationship where they say, "Oh my gosh, I just had my first grandbaby. Let me send you a video." And I ooh and ah, and it's genuine. It's not fake. But we talk more about their lives than my life. So being liked is very important in my book. Now, trust. There's no business without trust. Absolutely. That's why I feel like you really need to show your customer that you are invested in their success. And then the book that we just wrote, my husband and I co-authored, I should give him credit. His name is also easy to spell, Steve Miller. And if you're old, you know what the Steve Miller Band is. And
Yeah.
now I can't believe how many youngsters, I'll say you're a youngster if you're maybe under 30, who's the Steve Miller Band?
Yeah.
Look it up. He's
Unfortunately.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So the last part of this book title is extremely important, and that is
You're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is produced by my company, Boss. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. Now let's get back to our special guest.
So the last part of this book title is extremely important, and that is to be remembered. Because people don't buy from you because you're like everyone else. They buy from you because you're memorable, because you're different, because there's something unique that you offer. So it's really important to be memorable. And that's part of that story idea. And if you are an entrepreneur, small business owner, that personal brand is very likely the company brand. When I worked for Walker, when I was an outside salesperson, I represented the company and that was their brand. But I didn't just have a company brand. I had my own brand. Oh my gosh, I had my own brand. And that was extremely important to my success. So as you think about yourself and your business that you present to prospects and customers, really to stand out and be memorable is what really gives you the edge to draw people in and make them want to do business with you.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. So whoever said they didn't agree, I disagree with them.
Right.
It's
Good
so
job.
important. It's so important because you are the face of the business. And so it's kind of what do they say back in the old days? Heard it from the horse's mouth or, something like that. It's like,
Right.
if I don't trust the owner, I don't trust the company. Right.
Right.
So, or if I don't like the owner, I don't like the company. Or no, like you said, that brand reputation, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I may not know this person actually, but I know people that know them. And if they tell me stories and they all kind of align, I'm going to kind of go with their story in some form or fashion. So tell us about the book and how an entrepreneur, where can they get started? Because I know a lot of business owners are like myself when I was younger. I'm not an introvert like I was. I had to work on that. But a lot of business owners are introverts, and that's why they don't like sales. How can we help them with the tools that you share in this book and resources?
Well, I like that you bringing up that point. I don't like sales. I'm an introvert. So many business owners start a business because of their passion. Now, I'm an entrepreneur. My husband and I have worked together for over 30 years in business, and believe it or not, we're still married. We've been married for 38 years. So I am an entrepreneur, and our business was always based around business goals. But what if you like candles? You want to start making candles, or you want to teach yoga or something else. I mean, it could be something totally unrelated to business, and you think, I don't like sales. I'm not a salesperson. Well, listen to this. I've got some news for you. If you don't sell your product, your brand, your service, no one else is going to. That's got to be your number one priority as a business owner. And I just listened to something. It was on a podcast. It might have been your podcast. I'm just going to say that. Someone said, I do have the gift of gab. And that always kind of makes me chuckle. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing because guess what? I have the gift of gab big time. But I think sometimes that works more against you than for you. Because as I said, listening is more powerful in selling, listening and pulling out details. So if you are an introvert, you are, I think, more naturally a listener. And that's actually an advantage. And also, as an introvert, you don't come on so strong. I listen to various business podcasts, and I'm not going to call them out really, but some of them are they're so pushy. They talk about how they give the client, here's the deal, and the client says, well, I can't go that high, can you give me something better. It's almost like the used car thing where they say, well, let me call my boss and see if I can get a better deal. And then they just go out to their car for a minute or whatever. They hang up the phone. Oh yeah, I talked to him and I guess we could give you a little better deal if we, do something different on the terms. To me, who wants to buy like that? I don't want to buy like that. Introverts, if you're listening and you're an introvert, it's probably going to take less discipline than someone like me, or maybe what Michael's turned into extrovert, that we've got to hold ourselves back. So, it is hard. You have to do things you're not comfortable with. In fact, I just talked to one of my consulting clients, and she needs to sell a product. She's taking a product to a trade show, and it's a big piece of equipment. And so she wants to sell it in that area rather than ship it back. So we use this really cool program. It's called, or I did it for her. No data, no business. So if you look that up, you can actually pick a geographical region and list the kinds of businesses that you want in that area. So she got that list. Well, time is of the essence. There's no time to be emailing or sending things or whatever. And she said, I'm just going to have to pick up the phone and do some cold calling. And she hates that. She hates that. Well, fortunately, she just listened to one of the first podcast episodes, one of mine, with a woman named Connie Lefferts. Now, Connie is in her 80s now and still runs a very successful business. And Connie talks about her first sales job was going door to door selling cancer insurance.
Oh my.
And
Wow.
she said, that's worse than like being one of the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, to get the door slammed in your face. But she's not an extroverted person. So it doesn't really, it's more about, do you care about what you're selling? And she said, if it wasn't right for them, next is, the word, who's next? But she did it more by listening and talking with that person. And until she got burned out on that, she was very successful. So cold calling or doing something that you're uncomfortable with, sometimes you just have to do it. I mean, I can't believe how many, I really tune into people who say they're not confident. And some of my most successful guests say, oh, I have imposter syndrome. I'm doubting myself. I hear interviews with Hollywood celebrities. Oh my gosh, I just, I never think I'm going to do it right. I can't watch myself on film, things like that. So all of us, none of us feel like we can take on the world every day. And there might be an exception to the rule, but really, I think deep down, all of us have those insecurities. So a big part of it is saying, okay, what is important? And if you take the focus off yourself, that's another big key for me, and saying, okay, if I'm nervous, it's because how do I sound? How do I look? How am I doing? And if you start thinking instead of the person, okay, how do I want to help you listening on this podcast? I want you to get something out of this that will help you grow your business, help you be more successful. So that is a way that you can get over that introverted part. So there's a very long answer to your question.
No, that's great. And I do want to, because we're here to help people and impact small business owners. And I do want to give them a couple other tools that we offer, and that is DISC. We DISC certified. So if people don't know what that is, that's predictable behavioral traits. So if you are coming across like that pushy salesperson or whatever, it just teaches you how to recognize those traits so you can kind of adjust your communication style. And then you mentioned the Carnegie book, but something that really helped me was Toastmasters. I did it for a couple, 3 years, and it really brought me out of my shell. I will say for the introverts, though, if I don't continue to practice that memory muscle in my head, I will go back to an introvert. I did kind of relapse a little bit during the COVID years because there weren't any events to speak at. I speak in front of large audiences now with no problem. But if I don't continue to use those muscles, I do, that introvertness will never go away. So those are a couple of tools to help business owners, because I know it can be frightening. I remember when I first had to sell the very first time, and it freaked me out, But let's talk about your book real quick. How can it help people? You have 2 books, and how does that help business owners?
Well, I do want to touch on a couple of things. I like your point about the DISC profile, and of course there are different, a lot of different Myers-Briggs and Enneagrams, and any of those that can help you read people, and then also using your own intuition to read people. And I've been in Toastmasters. I went a long time ago, actually, and this is kind of funny because I've always been interested in humor, and I entered in a humor contest, and I bombed. And so it's, it was humbling, but it really taught me a lot. Like you said, a lot of it's just being comfortable in front of people. Yeah. So as far as my books, as we touched on, sales is something that if you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, it probably isn't in your ilk. It may be if you're lucky, but it probably isn't. So my sales book really gives you the approach I'm talking about. Finding out about what your customer, needs or what will help them. Things like saying, I'm not going to sell you something unless I really believe it will work for you. And walking away from a sale, boy, talk about building trust. No, I'm not going to sell that to you. Listening, getting to know them, doing what you say you will, which I am just always shocked. I'm sure you experience this too when someone says, hey, thanks for calling me back, or thanks for following up.
Yeah.
Some of those being brilliant at the basics go a long way, really. So this, my sales approach, which got me to number one and has helped us build a very, profitable business all these years, has been more just of a relational type of, back and forth. And all my sales career, I've always been in long-term potential clients, sales that could happen over and over again. I could sell new products to them. They could refer me to other people. And if they like me, why wouldn't I say, do you know anyone else who's in your position, the position that I've helped you with? Because I'd be honored if you would refer me. And if you do, you better believe I don't, I want to make you look good. I won't do anything to make you look bad. So, for me, talking about your branding promise, who you are. In the Uncopyable sales book, I talk about a woman who said, I give white glove service. So what does that tell you? White glove service. That sounds great. And she delivers on that. And so that's why people buy from her. And in the sales book, I have an example of someone who said his product is not the lowest price product, but he knows about every manufacturer's rebate. He knows every new product that's coming out. And if they can't get their product, he's been known to hand deliver it to them, drive his truck out, in the snow. And so he says, what will a better price do for you if you are out of product? And actually, one of the things he sells is toilet paper.
Oh,
So
wow.
to big hotels, industrial, he's like, how's that going to help if you're out of toilet paper at the Hilton in the middle of the night? A better price is
Yeah.
not going to save you. So those are all things to think about as you look at sales in a totally different way. And as far as the branding book, I think it's really important to know yourself. You talked about the disc profile, do the disc on yourself, obviously, so that who you are, and take some time to think what is important to you. And of course, it can't be making a bunch of money. That can't be number one. Of course, we hope that comes from number one, but number one is, what are my values and how can I use those to help others and to build my business? And then you think about what we call your moose, which that's your target market. And it comes from a story of if you were a moose hunter and you went out into the forest and you started, trying to hunt bear or deer or rabbits or whatever, any of that time that you spend with them trying to pursue that animal is not going to help you get your goal. It's going to actually take away from your goal. It's that opportunity cost. So finding out what's important to you, finding your target market, and then tying the two together. How can I, meld those together in a way that's meaningful? And then, of course, you have to find out what's unique about yourself. What about you will appeal to your moose? One of them is a story like I call myself Muffler Mama. People call me Muffler Mama, and that represents something that is very memorable. And we always wear orange. My husband and I, that's our branding color. You'll never see us without some orange on. And if you have to ask, it might be our underwear, so don't ask.
So if we can't see it, we know what it is.
You don't want to know. Yeah, right. So, but it could be language like the moose. What is it? What can people say about Kay Miller that they can't say about anyone else? Well, they can say she's Muffler Mama. They can say she's wears the color orange. Moose is her lingo. If you look up any of those two on the internet, I will come up. No one else will come up. And with a name like Kay Miller, that's not going to help me. If your name is very unusual, that might help you. But I encourage you listening. What can you say about yourself that can't be said about anyone else? And it's like a recipe. It's not one ingredient. It's how it all comes together and what you stand for as your brand. It's the recipe and what different components you can use and to represent yourself and to be memorable and meaningful to your moose.
Very nicely said. Well, we've just barely dipped our toe in the water, but I think we've piqued some interest to where people probably want to know, where can I find out more about you? And do you have resources to offer our listeners?
Well, I appreciate that you liked the interview. I've enjoyed it very much. And yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Miller K. So just Miller and then Kay. I do have a free gift for you. Of course, I'm asking for your email, and you might hear more from me. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But I have a 5-email series called The 5 Steps to Building a Profitable Personal Brand. So 5 different emails that will get you started on that journey. And then if you like what you read there, you'll learn more about the resources that I can help you with. Our website is beuncopyable.com, and I am Kay at beuncopyable.com.
Very nice. Well, listeners, I hope you sign up for the email series. I know I'm going to. I always end our shows with a question. If we were in front of an audience of small business owners, all sizes of business, years of business, what's one thing that could be applicable to all of them? It could be a quote, it could be a book they need to read, or just some insights of helping them.
Well, I'm going to go back to that Dale Carnegie book because it's so simple and it's such a good reminder. All of us, who's more interesting than us, right? Nobody. We're all very interested in ourselves. I love the story in the book where he talks about a conversation at dinner with a botanist, some big, important guy who was into botany. And he asked him, he said, I know nothing about botany. Well, they spent the whole evening the botanist was telling Dale Carnegie everything that was involved. And the next day he reported to the host of this dinner party, Dale Carnegie's so interesting. He's such a great conversationalist. So that, even though we hear over and over, you need to listen. I love that book and that story because to be interested is to be interesting.
Very nicely said. Well, you've been a blessing to many. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. And thank you so much to everyone listening. I do wish you all the best.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is created and produced by my company, Boss. Our business is growing yours. Boss offers flexible business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. If you need help growing your business, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.